Ahoy there, YouTube. I talk a lot about short stories on this channel and why I think they're great, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite short story writer of them all. Who is it? You'll have to wait until after the intro to see, even if you haven't already read the title of this video. Okay, my favorite short story writer ever is the one, the only, the inimitable Philip K. Dick, and I have here one of his volumes of collected stories. This is Minority Report. I think there are 5 volumes in this series total, and I have them all, and so should you because they're amazing. Philip K. Dick was one of the classic generation of sci-fi writers. He occupied the middle portion of the 20th century. He was more than a little bit insane, very paranoid, and where some of his contemporaries like Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke were kind of techno-optimists, kind of reveling in the glory of technology and what could be accomplished by it. Philip K. Dick was a very pessimistic, paranoid sort of guy, and most of his stories deal with the downside of technology and his pessimistic view of the future. But they are insanely clever. I've always said the short story is a great form because all you need is an idea. One good idea can sustain a short story. In order to write a novel, you have to have good characters, you have to have good pacing. There's a lot that goes into it. To have a good short story, you just have to have one good idea. And Philip K. Dick had many, many, many great ideas, extremely clever ideas. He wrote also a ton of novels, and I've only read a couple of them, but I don't really think they're very good because he's not very good at characterization. He's not very good at writing believable characters who you care about and empathize with. He gets too bogged down in the technical details. But those technical details are the perfect fodder for short stories. In all probability, he has written a short story that's the basis for one of your favorite movies. He's been adapted a ridiculous amount of times. Here is just a partial list of movies that are derived from the short stories of Philip K. Dick. Total Recall, Minority Report, Adjustment Bureau, A Scanner Darkly, Blade Runner, and Paycheck, which is a terrible movie, but my favorite short story of all time. Such a brilliant short story. You got to read it. It's so good. Writing as he did in the 50s and 60s, there's a lot of talk about the Cold War. There's a lot of talk about Russia, a lot of worry about global war. That crops up a lot. A lot of very clever uses of technology. A lot of some of his stories are just entertaining fantasies as well. They're not all super technologically heavy. Some of them are just fantasy stories. There's a great one, an early story called The King of the Elves, which Disney was going to adapt into a film, and somehow it fell through. It never got made. But I was really excited for that because that's just a charming story, The King of the Elves. One of my favorites by him. You really have to read that one. So I don't want to go into too much detail about the stories themselves because many of them end with a kind of M. Night Shyamalan style twist, and it would be a spoiler to really talk about the content of the stories. But as I mentioned, some of the films that were adapted from them, you can get the kind of idea of the sort of stories he writes. In this one, the title story, Minority Report, is of course about a police force that can see the future and is arresting people for crimes they have not yet committed, called the Pre-Crime Unit. And there's all kinds of moral implications that go into that. And I think it's kind of prescient and relevant today where we're talking about that sort of stuff in our own law enforcement. Although we don't have the seeing into the future technology, there's, declaring people dangerous and saying that we have to punish them for things they might do rather than things they have done. I think that, not to get too political, I think that's a real danger, and his story really gives insight into that. And it's a great movie with Tom Cruise. If you haven't seen it, you should see the film. So there you go. That's my favorite short story writer ever, Philip K. Dick. I read every story he wrote. I really highly recommend him if you're a fan of short stories, and if you're a fan of science fiction in general. He has just some of the best ideas that transform into amazing stories. I don't know how he comes up with these ideas. I certainly wouldn't be able to, but that was just a facet of his peculiar, slightly insane genius. That's my review for today. I've been Logan Albright. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and I'll be back with another book review as soon as I can. Later.